6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Welcome to Drive Time Exchange. As rubber hits the road, hard talk meets great music. Monday to Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. on Net Radio, taking you above and beyond.
Right, everybody, and of course this is where we welcome you inside the Drive Time Exchange. Of course, you are listening to New Era TT Radio, taking you above and beyond, and it's a real pleasure to be here with you this afternoon inside of the Drive Time, and we know you're going to have a really good time. All you have to do is stick and stay with us. All right, of course, in between this session we are led by none other than journalist extraordinaire Tony Fraser. So Tony, good afternoon to you. How are you doing?
I am good, quite good this afternoon. It's a little bit cloudy where I am, but that means that the heat is not as vicious as it normally has been over the last couple of weeks, but I am fine. How are you going?
Actually, I'm pretty well, you know, and I am enjoying the weather today. I couldn't take it yesterday at all.
Okay. I am looking on the screen. I sent you a picture of our guest. Maybe you didn't get it. I will try to send it to you in a moment again when we start.
That is right. I have one of him anyhow.
Okay, wonderful. He's a popular man, so therefore he's not going to appear on camera. He's working out in the field. He looks distinguished there. All right, that should signal what we are going to talk about this afternoon. Concerns that we all have in Trinidad and Tobago and in parts of the Caribbean also, because we are all in one small space, and the conflicts that are raging between powers which are bigger than us, the great United States and of course Venezuela, a country much larger, much more fortified with military stuff than we can ever be. That conflict is going on. And most recently, I saw in the newspaper this morning, or is it during today, is that the President Maduro of Venezuela is charging that Trinidad and Tobago has been involved in a negative kind of way, and they are not happy about that. But all of that apart, we know what has transpired over the period of time of the last 3 weeks. So I thought I would, get some expert opinion on board this afternoon to talk to us about, what are the expectations, how should we react as citizens, because it's one thing for army people and government ministers, opposition leaders to be talking. It's a different kind of thing for the citizens. So my focus really is on the citizens and Trinidad and Tobago. We have quite a lot of infrastructure, important infrastructure, and so we are concerned. And to do that, we have with us this afternoon, as indicated. Now you see his picture on the screen, Dr. Garvin Heerah, who is a regional security expert, somebody who has been involved in this business for a whole long period of time institutionally, and now I believe outside of that government structure. I'm not too sure, but he can tell us where he is at this point in time. Dr. Heerah, welcome to the program and thank you for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, and thank you, Sir Charles, Your Excellency, and to the supporting team in the background, and to all members of the media platform this evening. Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, those who are streaming and viewing online, and of course internationally and regionally, because you guys have a wide viewership. And you can find me anywhere. I'm worried about that now because you guys seem to you guys seem to possess some sort of intrusive investigative and intelligence capabilities that I'm proud of, because I'm on the field and I acknowledged and committed to do the talk, and then you found me. So kudos to that. I wanted to, before we even begin to talk, and I think it's my footprint of identity, that I want to open with a verse from Proverbs 29:18. And this is in full respect to everyone's religious persuasion. But in the Word of God, in Proverbs 29:18, it tells us that a people, a society without vision will perish. Where there is no vision, a society or a country or a people will perish. And in some version, it says where there is no direction, the people run wild. And that should be an opening statement for us for the conversation as we go along for the rest of this evening, Tony and team.
Truly it is. And we're going to place the question right in that context. What should we be expecting from leadership in the country? Because after all, it's a circumstance which we, the citizens, have no power over. And surely a lot of people in the country are looking towards the leadership of the country, i.e. the Prime Minister and the government, as to what can we expect? We know of the threats, we know of the possibilities. Is it, let me ask you very directly, is that we have to prepare for some conflict between the US and Venezuela and some fallout effect on Trinidad and Tobago?
You have to be what we call in the reality zone. Yes, there have been some utterances that there's no war. Yes, there have been some pronouncement that there's nothing to be worried about and we are supposed to be in a feel safe mode. And of course, contrary to that, we have heard certain type of utterances. We are seeing some poking of the bear going on. We are also seeing some nudging, and there's some agitation in the tone of how things are being said. And so, to answer your question, what should we be expecting? What should we be seeing? What exactly does the citizen want to see or hear at this point? And I want to bring you into a picture, into a mind picture, Trinidad and Tobago, Tony and team, as we are speaking this afternoon. Have you ever attended, for instance, a concert for the main act or for the main artist to be able to appear and to perform, and you're sitting there and you're waiting in expectation, and that person doesn't come on stage? You feel for some reason or other, you feel rejected, you feel disappointed, you feel cheated in some way, and you felt like, I'm going to get my money's worth here because I came to see or to hear many people, including myself. I'm sure you too, Tony, because you're a cricket fan. You would go to a cricket game in the old days because you want to see Brian Lara bat. Not about the West Indies playing, not about the opposition, but you're really going to the game to see Brian Lara bat. So you don't get to see him bat, you feel disappointed. I draw this picture because we, as a citizenry and as a people, and I say this as I continue to say with the greatest of respect, would have handed over command and control to the government. You all are in charge. The government is in charge. We've handed over command and control to the Honorable Prime Minister and her lead ministers. And therefore, with so saying and understanding, we are expecting now that in a time like this, Be it that there may be no issue here, some people are pressing the panic button, some people are down the anxiety lane, we understand all of that. But at this point, in order to quell that, put some structure, guide and advise the citizenry accurately, and provide authenticated updates, there needs to be an address to the nation, starting with that, or some sort of in-face conference speaking where questions and answers can be fielded, and we.
You seem to have had a dropout there, or is it on my side? Charlo, are you hearing him?
I'm back in. I'm back in.
Okay,
Sorry.
good.
Yeah,
All right.
so we are expected now as a citizenry to hear something and to be told. And I went further to say, which I continue to echo, that maybe some sort of structured system. And I said the establishment of a national coordination task force, which really is a body that comprises maybe of the prime minister or her lead ministers, but that speaks to the country once a week. We're not going more than that, just once a week, to keep us abreast of the developments that are happening outside there, so that the citizens can feel more safer because they're hearing from those who have their hand on the command and control. When you don't do that, you are allowing us to absorb, you're allowing us to receive and to perceive and interpret information that has been pulled from here, there, and everywhere. Because overnight, everybody becomes a journalist. Overnight, everybody wants to pass certain information without accrediting it or authenticating it. And people are left sometimes to act and behave based on what they're hearing. And I'm saying, in order to quell all of this, the government needs to recognize, wait a minute, we need to step in here and bring this into some order. Some people are saying, and I'm hearing it, they don't need to. We don't need to. We don't have a situation on hand. But in the opening news preamble that you shared, and some of the other readings that have been from accredited sources, we are seeing developments outside there. We are hearing of certain type of utterances that are coming towards Trinidad and Tobago, pointing fingers, the persona non grata, some of the other issues of what would have been said about our prime minister and the government, leaves us as a citizenry now to ask the relevant questions. Hey, what is the scenario here? What is the situational awareness? Where do we stand? Because from that, a certain type of preparation, which we're going to speak about, I'm sure, and readiness of a country also has to be placed into perspective.
So what I hear you saying, Dr. Heerah, is that a vacuum exists, and therefore, in the circumstances that we are, all kinds of statements are rushing in there. Of course, I heard the minister, of Homeland Security, Mr. Alexander, saying a couple of days ago that he cannot respond to every issue that has been raised. He will continue to, I suppose, at the appropriate time, make statements or respond, really not making statements, but respond to questions which may be posed by reporters. Is that a kind of substantial position for someone in his position to take?
Now, the Honorable Minister would have said that really and truly he doesn't see the necessity to have to respond to everything that pops up. Probably not have to speak to these things. Okay, I understand. However, I am saying this is beyond the desk or the geographic span of management of the Minister of Homeland Security. We're talking about a regional and international issues where our country is prominent. We're playing an integral role. We're in a precarious position. And be it him, or maybe he can be what I'll call someone who is contributing towards a statement or bringing some sort of semblance of order and structure. But it is expected that the government speaks. It is expected that something be said. And this is just basic governance structure for what I'll call the establishment of safety and security for a country. We need to hear from who's in charge. Who's in charge is telling us they don't need to tell us anything at this point because nothing is really existing. You're overreacting, but people are seeing certain developments almost on a daily basis. and they are drawing their own picture. And therefore, to correct the picture that is being drawn, we need to hear from the officials, this is what it is, this is where we are, and you either need to be worried or you don't need to be worried. And I think coming from a press conference, an impromptu mic in your face type of conversation, no, the level of system and risk that we are facing has gone way beyond that at this point. And it's just my advice based on the experience, based on my exposure and what I've seen outside there. At this point, somewhere along the line, we should have had an address to the nation. We should have some sort of established source of information sharing, because there are those who are researching and listening and following and all of that type of stuff. But then there are those who are listening to other people on the streets and going by what people, the hearsay information. And in order to correct the hearsay information, the source of information that is coming to the citizenry needs to be authenticated. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's a basic requirement that in such a situation, communications are absolutely essential to give people a sense of what is happening. Of course, it must be understood, and that is acknowledged, that Washington, the President of the United States, and his Secretary of State are not going to tell our Prime Minister, our government, every plan that they have, every every move that they are going to make. But notwithstanding all of that, and I agree fully with your statement that communications in a possible crisis situation essential to keeping the citizens informed and perhaps to stop any panic, because there has been talk about panic and the opposition creating panic in the country and so on. Well, if that be so, I am not saying it is so, but if that be so, if that is what envisaged by the government, then it has to have a counter to all of that. But let me ask you, Dr. Heerah, give me your experience, your expertise. I am sure that you've been scanning, these kinds of actions that are taken by the United States over a long period of time, centuries really. What is the likelihood, in your assessment, that there is going to be an attack on Venezuela? That question was put to President. What's his name? His name seems to Trump. President Trump recently by a journalist, and he didn't take a position really, but he did not say no. What is your assessment of the situation and the possibility?
Well, I have been wrong in the past, so I stand in the neutral ground of being pointed at as wrong this time. However, we've all done assessments. You've read the room, and you may either come up correct or incorrect. So I want to speak from what I've read the room to be. You have one of the largest naval war vessels inching its way towards the Caribbean Sea, the USS Gerald Ford. You have an armada, an assembly of naval forces in our territorial waters, sorry, in the Caribbean Sea, externals of our territorial waters. Not only that, you have vessels below the surface of the water. You have unmanned air vehicles and unmanned surface craft. And you also have the redirection of satellites. That's a big one. So it's not only the aircraft, the vessels, the submarines, the unmanned vessels, air and maritime. You also have the redirection of satellites. When you have
Sorry,
that,
before you go on, just give our listeners and viewers an appreciation of why the satellites. You place emphasis on the satellites. Why?
When you have sensitive vessels and armed, let's just call the armed forces, to that level of presence, they are supported by high-level communications. And that high-level communications is beyond the stratosphere now. We're now talking about sat-nav, satellite navigation, to support some of the operations. That is a different layer of military strategy. I'm saying all of that to say, based on geopolitics, someone now needs to ask, so Tony Fraser has asked, but how much is this thing costing? That runs into millions and billions of dollars. Would a country like the United States spend all that money to just assemble or berth or drift or patrol an area and then leave? There has to be another purpose and another reason. So having read into what I have said, I am of the opinion that there may just be a strike to support the assembly and to justify the spend and the presence of these naval vessels and aircraft that is in the area. Because in that way, we have now equated the presence with an action. The objective and the goal I cannot say, because that's a military, that's a presidential. We're talking way above my pay grade here now into Washington, and of course maybe some of our regional heads. However, it could very well end up being a conversation that advises Venezuela to make certain decisions, and not a finger is lifted, but a presence was felt, and there's a cost to that. That too also is resulted as a tick in the box. Okay, we've achieved the objective and the goal. What is the objective and the goal? I can't say at this point, but we have to read the room, and I'm reading the room to think with that sort of an assembly, there's a stronger possibility of a strike than let's re-anchor and leave the area.
Yeah. And I am glad you diverted a little bit into another possibility, which is that all of what you've described, they have been set up to put it broadly and in a rank kind of way, to put some fear into the mind and the heart of President Maduro. And there has been talk about, Spain offering a place for him to go to avoid the catastrophe of what the Americans can do to Venezuela. Is that a possibility that the United States is assembling this armada, I don't know if that's the right military word, to frighten Maduro out of Venezuela?
Yeah, so armada is a word you can use definitely for that assembly. And I think probably in a situation like this, in the strategy of war, there's something known as making the right decision as per making the wise decision. And it is to make a decision that at the end of the day, there's no loss of lives, there's no war, and there's no strike that could affect the socio-economic strata of Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, and neighboring countries, including the US and the global brand and image at this point. But then again, if that is so, the extraction and the removal and the safety of that whole aspect, that takes into a certain type of military exercise and operation that probably is already being theatered somewhere by decision makers and military strategists. So there, at this point, they're looking at option A, option B, option Charlie, option Alpha Bravo Charlie. What could really be the decision here? And at the end of the day, the main frame, the driver to all of this is to ensure that we don't have loss of lives, damage to infrastructure, or damage to brand and image in the international realm. And I think that is where the decision and the conversation is. But however, that does not mute Trinidad and Tobago. We can't be like, well, we are caught in between a rock and a hard place. We just have to watch and be quiet. And people have used cockroach in foul fight and the normal thing. No. We are playing an integral role because of our geographic position, because of what we have said, what is said about us, and therefore Trinidad and Tobago, which is a more educated, informed population today than 10 years ago, needs to be told something by our leaders, because as I open the statement, we handed over command and control, and we're expecting, if you are in command and control, you would lead with that sort of firm decision-making perspective and advise your citizenry as to where we are and what is to be expected, especially with proactive preparation and predictive governance.
Okay, just to remind our listeners and viewers that we are talking with Dr. Garvin Heerah, who is an expert on all of these security matters, war and conflict and so on in the region. He has been in several positions, official positions in that regard, and he is lending that experience and knowledge to all of us here this afternoon. And of course, if you want at some point in time, Sir Charles will invite you to call in, and maybe you have a question for Dr. Heerah, or you want to state your own position on these matters. We welcome all of that. Now, let me go to the question of the military capability of the United States. I mean, that needs really no statement from me. The world knows that it's a superpower in terms of military hardware, in terms of expertise and capacity on all of that. So that is not in question. What of Venezuela? If, and there is a suggestion that what is called in the military language, boots on the ground, that is American boots on the ground in Venezuela. Can the Venezuelans, given whatever military equipment they have, can they put up a fight, or is it a question of putting down your guns and surrendering?
Venezuela has been known over the years to be a fighting country. From way back when you trace the history, Vasco de la Gama and Simon Bolivar, the full works, and you go back and you do the history. But we have to also understand a people and their culture. Is the people of Venezuela willing to say, you know what, we are ready for a new regime and we would prefer to do this peacefully? Or are they at a mindset where they are in supportive of their present regime and will fight to the end? Some people have used the word sovereignty. In this sort of discussion, let us explore the word sovereignty, because what it really speaks to, as when we say sovereignty, okay, my nationality, this is my sovereign space and I own this and whatever. But the real depth thinking in research, not only academic, but in the aspect of understanding where you are when you use the term sovereignty, it's really ownership. We own this. It's the passion that we have with the West Indies team. That's a sovereignty. We own this team. This is us. It represents us, good or bad. And that sovereignty of ownership runs through the vein of the Venezuelan citizen. Some may be favorable towards the regime, some may not be. But they would not just want to see their country taken over. So therefore, the replacement to the present regime would also have to have a buy-in and a support, and more so a following that convinces the citizens and the population that we are going to have a new Venezuela, a new vision, and a new dream, and that has to be sold. So would they take arms and prevent what we would call an invasion? A large percentage may very well do so. And we have seen the pictures of preparation. We've seen their weaponry and artillery, and they can do real damage because they also have aircraft, they have vessels, and they have boots on the ground, just as you said. But a very, very, very important thing to pay attention to is that there are utterances that Trinidad may just have well painted a target on their chest, and Guyana, should they be invaded or struck by the US. That, I thought, was a little bit out of context and carried a strong vein of threat against our country. Would something be aimed at our country, or would there be a war breaking out against us? It may not very well be that. It could very well be sleeper cells. It can be that people are already in Trinidad or already in Guyana to do serious harm to our infrastructure, as sending a message of retaliation because we were hit by another system and you all were in support of it. That is something that is for our Homeland Security and our defense ministers, and of course those who are now tasked with the role of protection of country, to be digging deep and to be aligning ourselves with the proper intelligence architecture to ensure that we safeguard against such threat, and we are prepared to treat with any issue that arises along such threat. This is the type of conversation that we need to be having now in the theater, and I'm hoping that we are. This is not to panic the country, as some people have accused other people of doing. This is not to put us into a state of fear. This is to put us in a state of readiness and proactive governance, so that we are asking a big one in these planning and strategies, Tony. the what if questions. We cannot dismiss the what if questions. And therefore, when there are what if questions, aligned to that are contingency planning. What are the contingency plannings if we ask a what if question and it happens to be true? Let's just put a pause there. We saw chaos, we saw panic, we saw anxiety, we saw some PTSD last Friday. Because the minute that things went out in a certain way uncontrolled and became viral, people started acting fearfully, picking up their loved ones, going and schools were closing off, businesses were closing, trying to get their children out, people just trying to get out of Port of Spain because there was a PTSD. And some of us rewind the tape all back to 1990, get out of tongue, get out of tongue. That was the verbatim. But we have to understand a simple, and it's not really simple, but an immediate task right now for our authorities is designing a crisis management or a critical plan to evacuate Port of Spain. How do we do that safely? How do we create the arteries? How do we get, if it happens on a school day, that an escalation of a threat arises and it's a work day or a school day, how do we evacuate the city? How do we create the arteries for people to leave the city? And how do we do that in an orderly, structured, coordinated fashion? Is our telecommunications capacity, is our telecommunications capability expanded or has the elasticity to cater for that upload of additional social media and calls being made and messages trying to go out? Can we accommodate that? These are some of the what if questions that has designed and demands contingency planning that needs to be taking place. If it's taking place, then tell us as a citizenry. I'm raising the conversation this evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Is it happening? And if it is happening, are we informed that it is happening?
Right, and I'm going to come back to you to expand on that even more, because the ultimate question this afternoon to you is, as you've put it, what if? What do we do? And so on. But I want to come back to a point you made earlier on about Venezuelans being in a kind of difficult situation of a way to choose. And I saw something on Facebook just a short while ago, which illustrates that sense of in-betweenity, if you like, very well. A woman, a youngish woman, when I say, I don't know, probably in her 30s or so, was very emotional about the state of her country, a Venezuelan woman that is, very agitated about the state of the country and the difficulties that the citizens go through on a daily basis. But she was just, and in that process, she was critical of President Maduro and blaming him and his government for the state of the country as it is. But she was equally adamant that what they don't need absolutely is an American presence in the country, so that people, as you've hinted at, people are loyal to the country. They probably want change, but nevertheless, they will not stand easily for an American overrush of their country. Is that a good conclusion you think to come to?
There have been some anti-American narratives in Venezuela, and that is historic. So what we would have heard, and we have to be careful too with Facebook. I'm not saying, Tony, that you might have listened to something erroneously, but we have to be careful, and I caution everyone that sometimes you have staged sort of pronouncements and narratives and scenarios to send a message out. But you have to pay attention to what is not so much what is being said, but what is the background to what is being said. And what has really been said, and if we had to quote what you saw, was that we feel we need a change, socioeconomic or along the lines of governance, but we don't need America to change it for us. I think we can do it for ourselves. With that new change, however, we are willing to work with the world so as to promote or direct Venezuela into this new season. Maybe that is what is. I've heard similar narratives. So it seems like, look, they think Maduro's had his time. They think he has not been governed by equity, and maybe it's time for him to move on. Can someone else bring a semblance of hope and a structure and a vision? You know, can we get another dream here now for Venezuela? But we don't need America to create that dream for us. we are independent and we can do that on our own. And then they are aware, they are very aware of the economic wealth of Venezuela that lies beneath the surface, which is the attraction of many world players. Because I said it before, and then we saw it after, where the bedfellows of America has also put their hand up. China, Iran, Russia. I don't have the empirical evidence as to what they have said, but their interests also exist on the ground over there. So this is what brings a certain amount of, makes it a little more complex now for us to grasp exactly where we are and where we are going.
Yeah, and a lot of, well, not a lot, but a few military aircraft have been spotted, pictured, televised of Chinese assistance, Russian assistance. Not too sure if they're leaving troops on the ground, but they seem to be leaving technology, aircraft technology on the ground. So the question now is, and just to inform our listeners and viewers, is that we are talking with Dr. Garvin Heerah, and who is a regional military and security expert, about the possibilities. We have to be alive, we have to be realistic. It is, I would think, it is far better to be prepared in some form or fashion than to sit back and say, well, whatever happens between Washington and Caracas will not affect us in Trinidad and Tobago, 10 miles off the coast. That's what, the northeastern coast of Venezuela. What, in your estimation, can happen in Trinidad and Tobago, assuming, of course, there is some physical conflict between Venezuela and the United States? What are the possibilities for some kind of, perhaps, a rub-off from what is happening there into Trinidad and Tobago?
I am safe to say that I believe if something has to happen, it would not be an all-out sort of raging war as to what we're seeing in the global stage. It's probably just going to be surgical strikes aimed at certain key installations. Would there be retaliation to that? Yes. And if there's retaliation from the ground in Venezuela towards some of those sort of attacks, there is a strong risk and a threat and a possibility that you can also have impact here in country because of our close proximity. What can also happen is that when those things happen and those type of operations commence, if it does get to that stage, and we are all hopeful in our prayer that it doesn't, you will have, as we are starting to see already trickles off, restrictions to your sea lane, your merchant marine sea lanes. So therefore your supply chain is affected. Restrictions towards your airspace. And with that, restrictions towards trade, be it in CARICOM or up to the Americas or whatever. When those type of restrictions are enforced, it is not business as usual. And therefore, our survivability and our dependability here in country is now still under that same tone and term, restricted. And under certain type of restrictions, it is not going to be business as usual or normal type of, normal way of life. In preparation, we will have to look at some of the key things, because in this crisis that may just erupt, how do we maintain, for instance, our economy? How do we maintain health emergencies, going to the hospitals and all of those necessities? How do we maintain the survivability of our people in a conflict zone? Because just 10 miles out, we may just be in a conflict zone. Would America decide we will need to be landing aircraft here in Trinidad or using Trinidad as a launch pad? Would they decide that at the last minute? That has not been discussed, nor have we heard anything about that. But suppose they do, because there are treaties and there are certain type of documents on the table that permits them so to do. If they decide to do that, how is that going to affect us in Trinidad and Tobago? What will we be expected to do? Can we send our children to school? Is it going to be normal? Can we be down in the avenue? Can we go look at a football match when this is happening in country? And this is what the education of the citizenry needs to be prioritized as. We need to know, to be updated and to be educated into where we are. And these are the plans. These are the contingencies, what we're looking at. You have to be prepared at all times for the unexpected. This is a new thing for Trinidad. We never thought, and by extension, the CARICOM, we have never dreamt of being in a situation like this. This is totally new to us. And therefore, because of that innocence, we need to be also prepared, because you are now in a different sort of space, Trinidad and Tobago. It so happens that our government happens to be in charge now in this new space, in this new season, and needs to be leading and governing and guiding and making the decisions that are aligned with the new dynamic, of the environment and the changes that have happened incrementally, almost overnight.
Yeah. If we assume that Trinidad and Tobago becomes some kind of base for American aircraft and whatever else the military will require to be to be at hand, is it conceivable that the Venezuelans will see? Let's assume that there is an air base in Wallafil. I'm just avoiding the major ones, right, for contention's sake. And that is being used as a space to launch aircraft and missiles and so on into Venezuela. Is there likely to be a response from Venezuela to those areas, wherever they may be?
Well, we first have to start answering that question based on what President Trump would have said yesterday with 60 Minutes, that he don't think there's going to be a war in Venezuela. We also have to echo what our Prime Minister would have said, that she knows nothing about a war. We're not in a war. We have to say that up front, right? Because that's what have been told to us. But we also have to pay attention to what history has shown us. If you are being used as a support to strike me or to invade my country, then you are perceived as part of the attack, and you're perceived as part of the enemy. The rest then is left up to me on how I will act or react towards that. So there's a threat factor and there's a risk factor. And Venezuela could very well retaliate towards an ally of the US rather than the US itself. It's easier to hit an ally than to try to hit the big brother himself. That is real. We can't put our heads in the sand in this Trinidad and Tobago. This is real. Would it happen? We don't know. Should it happen? We hope it should not. We hope that this can end in dialogue and we walk away from the table on a compromise and a common ground and a win-win. But the reality is that it probably just something could just tip. It may just tip in the wrong direction because we're dealing with emotions. Things are said a certain way, not what is said, but how it's said. And it may be reacted to based on our feelings. And therefore, what we have just described, animated as it may have been, could very well be a possibility. So I'm saying, if it has to happen, it should not hit us overnight and we're panic and scrambling. If it has to happen, we should be in a way, at least be prepared by our leadership, by our governance, by our systems, to be ready to work with that. And therefore, I'm saying it is a critical situation now in this new season for a certain type of leadership. We cannot just go by that. We are asking the wrong questions. We are creating the wrong scenarios. We are building too much on this. It's not necessary. We don't have to. We also have to explore that little space of what if and ensure that there are contingencies to treat with these what if should they materialize. That's all I'm saying.
And I am sure, Dr. Heerah, that you're fully aware that World War I was started by an accident, so that it may not be some full-scale war that engages everybody, but some accidental move here, there, or everywhere that can trigger some serious conflict on our land. And I take the point, and perhaps I can ask you to respond to some people who may be in our listening and viewing audience and saying that we are unnecessarily causing panic amongst citizens, feeling that there is a possibility that something ominous can happen to Trinidad and Tobago, given a conflict, a possibility of a conflict between Washington and Caracas.
Before we do, Tony, I must apologize. I can only go to the hour.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to pull out at 1700.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah, go ahead. So respond.
Yeah, no, I agree. There are some people who will probably say that this is not necessary. We don't have to be speaking this language. You're striking fear into the hearts of many. And I opened up on that caution that it's not so to do. It is really to bring us to a position of understanding the where we are, and then to question, evaluate, and examine whether we are ready as a country, because we boast, and since sometimes in many cases and instances we perform at an international best practice. We perform above the level of third world that some people like to see us. And therefore, if we are to maintain that identity, if we are to maintain that sort of what I will call professionalism as a country in our governance and our presence and how we react and think. Therefore, it is very important for us also to have plans and preparations in place and contingencies should this situation evolve towards the wrong angle or go to the next level. It is simple as tsunamis. We may never get a tsunami in this country, but there's a drill and a preparation for that. Why? Because it can bring mass destruction to a country. So we've explored it in country. Hurricanes would be within our area, latitude and longitude. We will see them coming towards Trinidad. We'll all be in a preparation of what to do should the event, where the evacuation centers, who have been identified, where are the resources, where are the assets, who's running this. But eventually it arcs its way out because we all know the passport of our Lord and Savior, as we like to claim, right? So it
All right.
doesn't happen. But I'm saying, in the same way we have examined possibilities and probabilities for natural disaster that can bring mass destruction or damage to a country that can affect our economy, our health, our infrastructure, and the mind of our citizens, we also have to pay attention to this brewing storm, this brewing tsunami that can very well erupt and affect us or may subside and arc its way away from Trinidad and Tobago. But the preparation and the discussion and the exploratory concerns of assets, resources, and planning has to be entertained. Horrific as it may sound, horrific as it may be sounding, we have
Yeah.
to think it through. We have to explore it, and we have to look and see where we are, where we are going, and how do we intend to get there.
Okay. Just before you go, if you've said a whole lot of things about what we should be doing, our preparation, mental preparation for the possibility, so it doesn't dawn on us one morning that something is coming in our direction. If we have an expectation that it is possible, we hope it never materializes, but nevertheless, the expectation is important. So before you leave, if you had to select two or three of the major things that we have to do, what would they be?
I would explore the what we'll call the business continuity of our industry, especially the oil and gas sector, to ensure that can stay ticking, that clock stays ticking. So we put contingencies in place for the sustainable of those operations, sustainability, our health sector with regard to hospitals and emergencies to treat with issues surrounding that. And very, very important indeed, the vulnerable in society to make sure that they are prepared and supported and we can reach them in the event of an emergency. With regard to military planning, and law enforcement and readiness in that light, we have a lot of experts in this country. Contrary to popular belief, we have good minds in the military and our law enforcement. And I think it is time that we tap into those people so that we also have a homeland security, defense combined plan and preparation to be able to protect and to secure the country in times of a crisis like that. But the health, our energy, which is the breadbasket of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, the vulnerable in society to ensure that they are protected in some way and we can reach them with regard to survivability if something like this has to go. And of course, we cannot dismiss the fact that as a nation, we should be in prayer because at the end of the day, we want peace to all of this. And as I said before in my opening statement, which I will use in my closing statement, this is in respect to everyone's religious persuasion. There is a time that we are called to pray. And as Trinidad and Tobago as a nation, we need to be in prayer for peaceful closure to this scenario.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you very much, Dr. Heerah, for opening up possibilities, giving us information, the way that we should treat with such a possibility without seeking to put panic in anybody, but being realistic that if something happens between Washington and Caracas, we are physically and otherwise in the middle of the crossfire between those two countries, and therefore possibilities, are alive for Trinidad and Tobago being hit in some way or the other because of the fight between those. As I think you mentioned, the elephants fighting, we small fellas on the ground might get crushed in the process. Thank you very much for being on the program this afternoon and enlightening our audience as to some realities, not attempting to panic anybody, but saying that this is possible and what we need to do at a national and personal level if it comes to all of that. Thank you very much, Dr. Heerah.
Thank you. It's been an honor. I want to compliment the media house for raising the conversation. I want to advise the country that it was not an issue where we were trying to panic anybody or get anybody scared. It was really to bring us to the point of reality, to be able to explore the what ifs and to have the conversation, at least start having the conversation. And hopefully, when the powers that be seek to address the nation, they will have information that will put us into a sort of safety, security, and calmness that will assure us that we are in a safe place. Because at this point, we are just left to believe what we're hearing outside there without it coming from an authenticated system. Thanks again, Tony and team, and thanks again, Trinidad and Tobago. I hope to rejoin you again for another afternoon where we could explore some of the various dynamics that are surrounding this. We want to talk about the geopolitics and the Caribbean itself now, expanding a little way out from the Trinidad and Tobago perspective.
Well, we don't need any more urgent to invite you back again. Surely you will get a note from us as to appear once again.
It's been an honor. Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Have a safe one.
Take care. Chalo?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think it was an hour packed with a lot of information, a lot of
information, yeah.
A lot of possibilities, how we can look at this situation in a way that, confronting the reality. It is no problem being over-prepared, The problem comes if we are under-prepared for what can happen. We hope it will not, but we are not in charge of pulling the levers of these military powers.
And that is so true. And something that he mentioned there, because, while we look at it, because we have never been there, we don't know what to expect. We don't know how far this things will reach out and affect us here in this space that we are not too far from. And citizens really have to be prepared should something happen on the first day. This is what we could. So the population really needs to have that preparedness taking place right now. Just like we plan for hurricanes and all those different things, we need to start to plan that way.
As you were talking there, Sir Charles, and something that I remember about World War II is that the Germans were fighting against the Americans and the British and all of that. And what was one of the strategies that was attempted by the Germans? They attempted to come from deep south of America. Instead of going across the Atlantic, they went southwards. And the hope was to come up from the south through the Caribbean Sea to attack the Americans. Of course, the Americans wise enough to block that pathway also. But I just bring it as, we are part of the world, and therefore we are not out of distance for any possibility to arise. So we have to be conscious about it. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So we were supposed to get a second guest this afternoon. We haven't heard anything from him. Maybe he is tied up, maybe whatever. I don't want to speculate as to what are the possibilities.
Yeah.
But Chalo, if we can use at least a part of the next hour, if we have listeners, viewers who want to make a statement or ask a question, then we can be prepared to stay for a while and see what happens on that scope.
All right. Well, we're going for the little break, and we will be back, and then we're going to open the lines to our listeners.
Wonderful.
Hello, human being. Hello, human being. I'm telling you, nobody. Oh, nobody. When you really think of it, nobody wins a war. Because the agony of defeat will linger. Nations still hating one another and superpowers. They're looking for more power. As long as violence and aggression still dwell in the hearts of man, brother, the war will go on. It cannot be won. No, the war will go on. It cannot be won.
The mid-morning just got better. Join Sir Charles for the mid-morning mix and mingle, where good music, real talk, health, and family matters come together, and your voice is heard. Whether you're at work, on the go, or just taking a break, this is the perfect mix to keep you engaged, informed, and entertained. The mid-morning mix and mingle, weekdays, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
S&H Rumbox, 137 Western Main Road, St. James, for all your retail and wholesale needs for alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. Call us at 686-0599 or visit us at 137 Western Main Road, St. James. S&H Rumbox, drinking out of the box.
Join me, Brother David Muhammad, every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio, Powerful Radio. Join me to hear knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Tuesdays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Collapse of the money system, disruption of foreign trade, people turning against their leaders for the blunders that they have made, environmental pollution, radiation taking its course, and the thousands that die in battle. Oh, what a waste of human resource. Of course, I'm telling you, nobody, oh, nobody. When you really think of it, nobody wins a war. The brutal clash of ideologies, carnage and social anarchy,
All
and
right, everybody,
life.
and of course, we are back inside with you here on the Era TT Radio. Welcome back to the Drive Time Exchange, and it's a real pleasure to be here with you. Of course, this is where you can get in on the show. You've been listening, and if you would like to ask a question or probably share a comment, as to what we have been talking about and how you see it, you can do so now at 281-1315. That's 281-1315. So you can give us a call, and it would be nice to chat with you. Yes, Tony, so we're back. I think you're muted.
Yeah, and what the suggestion for people to get involved in the discussion is very important. In that the politicians and the army and the police and so on are not the only ones who live in this country. In fact, those of us on the sidelines far outnumber all of them, and we have as big and bigger interest in all of this as anyone else, and therefore we shouldn't be afraid to express our views in the circumstances. And I think it's important, Charlo, for the leadership to hear from the population about what are some of the best options for Trinidad and Tobago. The government will come and go. Any government comes and goes. However, the population, the people, we are here always, and we therefore have to look after our own interests. all of that is to say is that if you have a view on all of what has been said, and it doesn't have to be, you're not a Garvin Heerah, but you have as much interest in Trinidad and Tobago's safety as Garvin Heerah or anyone else has. So call us and tell us what you think about the situation and how we should do best in it. Chalo, one of the things that Garvin Heerah made very clear very early in his statement is the need for communication.
Yeah.
We have a government in office. We have an opposition, and the opposition is important too because the opposition makes up a part of the government. Sometimes you don't think about it in those terms, but technically, the opposition is part of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The opposition goes to Parliament, makes statements, put forward proposals, and the like. Operates in a way in the country that there is a role for the opposition, so that both the government and the opposition, as Dr. Heerah made a point, have a responsibility to tell the country something about how they see the country in all of this and what information they have that they can share with all of us, so that, if there is panic, if there is a comforting, assuring word, and not simply some minister saying no panic or all is well, that is of no consequence really. The country requires far more than that. I'm sure that you agree with that position, Charlie.
I do agree with that, Tony, because and just as Commander Heerah said, they have the weekly press briefings, where the post cabinets and those things. So just as we did for COVID, I think we should really be making sure we supply the country with information, even if it's not a question and answer situation, but at least where you put out something. Mm-hmm. At least the country would know and get that information that they are looking for. Because right now it's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, I listened to some voice notes being passed around over the weekend from what was taking place on Friday with this exercise that we now know was a drill. And in some of those individuals, you can hear the panic in the person's voice, talking about, well, do this, call this one and do it. And you can hear the fear in the person's voice who's actually sharing this note. So they have a responsibility to make sure that they maintain calm, because if at this stage it is difficult to get information, should we move to the next stage, what is going to happen?
Yeah. And you're right, in a hurricane, when a hurricane approaches, there is a lot of communication about safe houses and so on, and there should be the same kind of statement. Some parts of the country may be more vulnerable than others. In the normal kind of situation, countries that are, producing war against other countries, they look for special areas to hit. And as Commander Heerah, Dr. Heerah has said, that our industrial installations right out of the country, there's no protection for them. So we become attacked with only
kind of losing you a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if the internet falling out there a little bit.
Okay, are you hearing me now? I don't know what is happening.
Yes,
yeah.
I am.
Yeah, I am saying that in any kind of situation like the present, countries look to protect their strategic resources. In our instance, the energy areas of the country, the installations, the infrastructure, and so on. We don't know if that is happening. We don't know if there is word from the government, an assurance by the American government that there will be protection, and there's no possibility of Trinidad and Tobago becoming a target, becoming a victim of the conflict between the United States and Venezuela. So that a lot of assurances have to be given. Of course, I recognize realistically, President Trump in Washington will not tell Trinidad and Tobago exactly what are the plans in the circumstances. I mean, that is not realistic. This contest is between the United States and Venezuela, and Trinidad and Tobago is a mere pawn, if you like, in all of this. And there certainly is not going to be any sharing of secrets between Washington and our government. Here we have to be realistic about that. We might be partners, we might be supportive, and so on. But this is about national security of the United States, and they are not going to put that at risk for Trinidad and Tobago. But nevertheless, having said that and having acknowledged that, there should be, the government will have more information than the ordinary citizen has in the circumstances, and therefore the realistic option or the realistic expectation of people in the country is that the government will come forward, the Prime Minister will come forward and make a responsible, informed statement to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, rather than, and in the absence, people talk about pushing fear in the country. The reality is, without information coming from the government of one kind or the other, then that leaves a vacuum for people to come up with their own ideas and fears and concerns.
Yeah, and the thing about it also, besides ideas and concerns, it also brings the fact that we have a lot of operatives who want to spread mischief, who are not for the government and would like to see this regime change also, in whatever way. So, this is an opportunity for them also to become relevant, and so don't believe that all those individuals will not take those things and those opportunities that are being presented. And you can see some of them taking that initiative to make themselves important once again.
Yeah. And it's short-sighted for anyone to think that they can push an agenda of conflict and remain without harm if there is that conflict which they are pushing for. And I'm not blaming anyone at this point in time for pushing conflict, but I'm just saying that given the nature of politics and politicians, in certain circumstances, an opposition will and a government will come against what is the realistic thing about a situation simply to win and score political points, which is foolish, because if there is something coming to Trinidad and Tobago, it will not determine who is what and who is not what. It will hit everybody in the country.
Everybody. All right. So, people, 2811315. That's 2811315. You can, chime in on the conversation. We'd love to have you inside. Yeah.
Yeah, and as we say, we are hoping that nothing out of the ordinary happens. But as Commander Heerah pointed out, Dr. Heerah pointed out very clearly in his opening context, is that there has been a lot of warlike behavior coming from the United States, the vessels, the build-up, the bombing of boats in the water, both in the Caribbean Sea and in the Pacific Ocean, approaches to Venezuela. And therefore, what is all of that about? It is not simply to flex muscles. It should be more. It obviously is more than that. One possibility is that part of what this is what is happening is to put the fear of God or whoever in the minds of the Venezuelan people is that what the Americans have, that is serious business. And notwithstanding the fact that Venezuela, we heard from Professor Anthony Bryan last week, is that Venezuela certainly has quite a lot of military capacity. But compared to what the United States has, and the US does not have to bring out its big guns in the situation, can easily crush Venezuela. Another thing is that the Venezuelans must be even far more concerned than we are, is that if there is, an attack on the mainland in Venezuela, the physical area, those things can be depleted easily. All of their resources, their gas and oil resources, those things are in jeopardy if there is some kind of physical conflict coming up between the two countries. So there is concern all around, and therefore we have to be careful. Let me remind people, Chalo, not that I think they need reminding, that Venezuela is between 7 and 10 miles off the coast of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
And therefore, what's it called, the serpent's mouth, it's packed with possibilities. Over the last couple of weeks, Trinidad and Tobago, the government here has talked about the deportation of Venezuelans. I don't know if it has started physically, but I saw some figure of 3,000 plus being rounded up and prepared for movement out of the country. But if there is conflict in Venezuela, Trinidad is one, and Tobago, they are going to be places seen as places of refuge from whatever is happening in Venezuela, and therefore that's a concern that we also have. We can't afford to have 10,000 additional people coming ashore here.
How do we stop them?
Yeah. What do we do? Bomb them out of the water? We have really, the talk will not frighten them. If somebody is seeking shelter, and you say, well, don't come here, that is of no consequence to say.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm looking at right now, even though our prime minister has made certain statements, and she has probably, I wouldn't say change her tone, but probably back down on some of those things that she was talking, the way that was as fast as they were coming. But we see that and yesterday particularly, I paid attention to what was happening in the news, and we see statements coming from President Maduro, his chief in defense staff, his vice president the last week, and all those things, directly to more or less, I wouldn't say threatening, but bullying more or less. It is look like to me our prime minister on Trinidad and Tobago with what is happening. But who is basically talking and who has that? Who he's fighting with? He's not talking to them. Mr. Trump yesterday said your days are numbered.
Yeah.
His defense persons are not responding to that. They're responding to us. They make no statement.
Well, the Chalo, the reality is that if a big fella twice your size threatens to bully you, you keep quiet about it. If he's your size, he will respond in kind. So I suspect some of that is happening. And I think you're absolutely right. Some of the fiery rhetoric of our prime minister, which was absolutely not required and needed in the circumstances. Clearly, she has perhaps taken advice, reflected on her statements about violence and kill them and whatever else, and transform the government. She has reflected on that, and probably the realization has hit her that she should not be making those kinds of statements. So some kind of conciliatory talk is absolutely necessary. And the reality too is, Sir Charles, this particular episode will come to an end in some point in time. It's not going to go on for a year or 5 years or 10 years or whatever. One way or the other, it's going to end. And therefore, so many of our hopes are situated in the dragon, in the manatee, coquino, and our general relations, the fishermen from Trinidad and Tobago going into waters which may be perceived to be Venezuelan waters. Those things will continue. We have to live after what is happening here. So that I think the right approach is to tone down the talk about violence and so on. I think that's a much better way to proceed, because among other things, as you are saying, among other things, talk does bring talk. If you want to talk Bajan talk for Venezuela, then they will talk Bajan talk for you.
We'll see how bad it is.
Yeah, and the reality is that they are far more capable of carrying out the Bajan talk than Trinidad and Tobago can ever be.
Yeah, especially when, let's say, they could talk that to us, but they can't, we can't talk that to them, and they cannot talk that to the US.
Absolutely, as you made the point there. There's no Bajan talk going from Caracas to New York or to Washington. They're quiet on that score, but they can pick on little Trinidad and Tobago and give me a slap and keep it quiet and so on. So I think the best option is to tune down.
But you know what I also noticed in the way that they are speaking also is that I don't know if it's because of the relationship that they had with the last administration, and recognizing that who's in charge now is a new administration. They seem also, while they are threatening, but they seem to be talking to her directly. Not as as only in Trinidad and Tobago. It's more like you in Trinidad and Tobago.
That's a very realistic and insightful tone. They're not against Trinidad and Tobago. It's clear they're against Kamala Prasad.
Yes, that is it.
Government of her government and all of the Bajan talk that has come from her. All right, so I think we can leave it there for the
Yes,
afternoon. We can. We had quite a lot of information from Garvin Heerah, and I know that that will be repeated in your programming tomorrow. It's a very important conversation. He brought up several, things.
There goes your internet again. Yeah, I think we have to get backup internet for you.
Yeah. So that hopefully over the next couple of days, it probably is, because the government is really in the dark as much as the rest of the country is. I keep repeating that Washington is not going to feel obliged to say anything to Trinidad and Tobago. That will be a security risk to them. And that is not a security risk that they're going to put their own people through. So, tomorrow morning is a good time. Chalo, you can take over and talk about that, where listeners, viewers can catch up the program again and what Dr. Heerah had to say about all of this.
Definitely. All right. Well, Tony, thank you very much, and enjoy your week.
Yeah. I am incidentally planning a quite interesting program. I'm not going to let it go just yet, but just let's say it's a community-oriented program that I hope to get the particular community, members of the community, to come and talk to us about community living and their fears and concerns about, the negative things that are taking over the community. After all, ultimately, our responsibility is to people and their activities, and not simply politicians and business corporations and so on. Chalo, I think I opened the door there for you to make a pitch about Christmas coming, and the need for companies which produce services and goods to advertise their products. And of course, New Era Radio has quite a lot of space and opportunity for advertisement. Over to you, Charlie.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much, Tony, as we go. And as he said that, yes, we are here to take care of you and provide you with the kind of service that you would need to get your product and service out throughout this Christmas period. So give us a call now, 299-5156. If you don't give us directly, leave a message. We will call you back, right? And we can have you advertise right here on the net. All right, stick around, don't go anywhere. Coming up at 6 o'clock, David Muhammad with the Black Agenda.